Welcome to the Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share that passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with the Latina perspective. Welcome to a mini summer season as I'm out in Pennsylvania for the summer. All right, let's get into it. Speaker, author, and dedicated visionary, Dr. Shelley Jones-Holt inspires education and business leaders to cultivate equity-driven systemic change within their organizations, schools, and communities so they can build a more just and promising future for all. A passionate and deeply empathetic speaker, Dr. Shelley shows audiences how they can take charge of their leadership and uncover a deeper commitment to their communities so they can build the legacy they were born to leave. Please enjoy our conversation. Hello, I am so thankful that you and your team reached out because as soon as I read what you are doing, I was so intrigued and wanted to hear more. So I am so excited to have Dr. Shelley Jones-Holt on the podcast and for my audience to be able to hear what she has to do. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, thank you so much, Karina. It's an awesome opportunity to be connected with your folks. Hey there, folks. My name is Dr. Shelley, what I am is an executive leadership coach. And interestingly enough, I kind of fell into this profession after several years of serving as a corporate executive educational leader. And when Mr. George Floyd was murdered in front of all of our eyes a few years back, something that I know a lot of folks today want to try to forget, but there are many of us that remember very vividly having a human being just murdered by the authorities. And as I was working with a lot of my colleagues at the time, many of them were just puzzled and confused and awestruck by what was going on because it didn't fit their schema of the world. And what it meant was that a lot of what was happening around them, they didn't always understand, they didn't always process, they didn't always see in the same ways as the people that worked with them or the people that they were supporting or serving. And so it offered an awesome opportunity when Mr. George Floyd was murdered for our corporate executives to have a kind of an awakening. And that's what kind of opened the door for me to become an entrepreneur and entering into business. Before that happened, I was very happy in my role as I started as a school teacher right out of Berkeley, kind of followed the trajectory up to becoming a principal and a district leader, and then eventually became superintendent of the 14th largest district in the state of Michigan. And this was huge. Like now I'm sitting in these spaces and places where all of the decisions are being made. I'm sitting with the execs from big companies like DuPont, like Google, like American Express, Target, Yahoo, like where I'm in these spaces. And, I'm just a little girl from La Puente. I'm not in my mind, I mean, I don't see myself. Many people say, "Oh, you're Dr. Shelley." Yes, to y'all, I may be Dr. Shelley. To me, I'm just still, a little girl trying to fit in from West Covina, California, and kind of wondering where my space and place is. And it was in those moments where I'm sitting with colleagues that I highly respect, that respect me, and now they're asking me, like, what do I do? What do I say? I can't deny this anymore. I can't deny racism exists. I can't deny sex. This doesn't seem right anymore to just sit in this space. And so I started just kind of helping them out, helping them see the world a little bit differently, helping them to understand that it's okay for people to see the world differently, and your leadership can be the catalyst, the bridge, the saving grace that they've been looking for their entire lives. There's nothing better than being able to not just have peace at home, but then also to go to work and be appreciated and have people understand what's going going on. And that's what kind of led to this business, was just me helping some friends, and helping those friends. I ended up helping more friends. And then I ended up with a business where I now coach and support executive leaders on strategic decision making. I help them on cultural proficiency. I help them to create workspaces that are safe and brave. And in the midst of that work, as you saw on the website, it also led to doing family work, because each of these people that I work with come from a family. And as we started to work together, they were like, oh my gosh, these ideas that I have about people, the way that I see the world, it was shaped by my upbringing. Absolutely. What are you doing with your kids? And so having those conversations then led to the next business. So it's been a wonderful, beautiful journey to do what I consider to be God's work. I know God calls us to do these things, but He doesn't often give us the blueprint as to how. And so I like to consider myself that person that just kind of sits alongside some of our leaders and shows them how to appreciate and support and make people in their workplaces. And in the midst of that, you make them more effective, more productive. And so happy people make more money, y'all. So I hate to break it to you. People happy at work, I promise you, your paycheck is going to be happy, and your bottom line, your black, you're going to remain in the black, because people are happy to be there and will work more for you.
Oh, yes, to everything you just said. I think that as I was growing up, there was this I was in the public school system, and so there was this idea of leadership and the people who were in charge as like the people who told you what to do, and as long as you listened and just didn't say anything, didn't question anything, you were like going to be fine. But
Yep.
then as you grow up to be an adult, you're like, this is not what leadership should be. And this is not how I want to continue that legacy of leadership. Like, leadership is much different than what we were taught. And I feel like I am a millennial. And so they're like, my generation is doing so much to heal from how we were taught in the family unit and in like the school system and then in the workplace, to then like undo all that, or just kind of like um reflect on that, and then we're faced with that choice of like, okay, what am I going to do to change that legacy for the better for my kids, for other people around me? And you're right, like, we don't have a blueprint. Like, we're just trying to figure out each day at a time, whether it is with parenting or with the communities that we are facilitating, and all the things. And it
Yes,
is a wild ride. And
it is.
oh, I think that like you said, the catalyst of the unfortunate event of George Floyd's murder was a time where it wasn't us like just trying to like just navigate the world it just is what it is what we heard a lot.
Right?
And now people were like, oh, I understand a little bit
I
now what you've
understand.
been saying. So how have
Right?
you, as a leader, like been like, how did you navigate through that complexity of having
Hmm.
to like one day just be like, okay, well, this is what it is, let me just do my
Break
job,
it down for
to
you.
then like, yeah, then to shift completely and educate people on this?
I think the biggest thing, and I love the fact that you're like, so you're a millennial. I am die hard, right? I would say smack dab in the middle. I'm more on the uh, tail end of Gen X. And so I also was taught the system, if you will. That's what we call it. We call it the system. It's the machine that we're in. And around when I was coming up was when the Matrix movies started to come out. And so there was a lot of different little things that were happening to kind of open the door to like, I'm not too sure. I'm not buying this, but I'm going to try to understand it, because one of the things that I tell people all the time in my leadership work is you can't change what you don't understand. And so you got to understand the system in order to change it. And so once I got in the system, and now, remember, in my mind, I'm still the young girl from La Puente, but in the room, I am Dr. Holt. I am the leader of of this school district or this organization. I represent 10,000 children. I represent thousands of employees. I represent a larger picture, and I'm in the room where things are happening, and I'm like, well, they don't need to happen that way. Let me show you a different way. Let me show you how it can happen a little bit differently. And so being in the room with those decision makers was very eye-opening, because at first you kind of go in there kind of timid, like, okay, well, I'm going to go in here and learn and understand. And then after a while you're like, I understand this very well. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what I'm understanding, and this is not what I want to create for the next people coming after me. And so you start to learn how to change and infiltrate and support the system from within, and start to create some of those changes. And I think that was a pivotal moment when I realized that I was working against a system that was trying to keep itself the same. And remember, the system is made up of people, and there are people in positions of power that benefit from things being the way they are. And as leaders, we have to be very strategic and thoughtful about how we shift and change, especially being a woman, a black woman in these spaces. And, being smart, being black or a woman of color, honey, that's a threat already. Right. And now to have a position of power, now I become a triple threat. Then I decide to open my mouth. Oh, Lord, today, hurry up and get rid of her. Right. I mean, this is why we're seeing right now as we speak, over 300,000 Black women have lost jobs since the new administration has come in. Over 100,000 Black women have lost jobs just in the month of April alone. April, just 1 month. And so, again, when we talk about leadership and leading from within, we have to understand that the system is doing what it can to maintain itself. And that's why it puts certain people in certain positions of power so that it can stay the way it is. So, knowing that and learning that, and then making the conscious decision that no, this is not the way that I'm going to lead. This is not what I want to do. And being able to cultivate and get people behind that is a skill. It's a leadership power move. It's a superpower. And there are many people out here that you may not have the position, but you got the influence. And this is what a lot of millennials are figuring out is we can influence. We don't have to have the positions. We have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have, all these different platforms where we can reach people and connect with them, and they're connecting with us, and we don't need more degrees than a thermometer to do it. And so I'm right in the middle of the old guard, if you will, the baby boomers. And then I can see these millennials that are coming in. I'm like, yes, yes, bring me more of them. They have guts. They're smart. They don't care about your systems of influence and power and control and the puppeteering that's going on. And so bringing more millennials in and providing them positions of leadership was one of the moves that I made, very intentionally. People are like, why are you hiring all these young leaders or these non-traditional leaders? Because they're smart and they can do the job, and they're not already jaded by the system. They're going to come in with new and fresh ideas. And my job is to open the doors and allow them to do what they do. And I think that positioning myself like that as a leader really came from the work that I did when I transferred my leadership expertise to my family. During COVID, we had a very unique opportunity. And as a leader, remember, I'm leading my school district, I'm doing the work, and now I'm coaching clients on Zoom, and they're dealing with all these different dynamics that are happening within their organizations. And then I have my 5 kids sitting at home, including my six, 5 at the time. I had a COVID baby, so she wasn't there yet. But I have all 5 kids at home, ranging from my son who was at Tuskegee University, and he had to stop playing football, all these different things, because he's like, Mom, I'm a junior in college now. Like, my junior year is gone. That means that my football career is over. I just need to focus on these things. So he's going through that emotional trauma. I have, kids in middle school and in elementary school that are now going through school online. We're now having to shift our entire lives to being home together. And that meant having to empower my kids in a different way, much the same way that I would empower my assistant superintendents or my directors or my coordinators or my managers in the corporate sector. Meaning you've got to, teach them what needs to be done or show them, and then release it to them and let them be creative with it, and however They do. And then of course you just come up and pick up the pieces along the way when something goes awry or doesn't go quite right, and you're like, I could have told you that wasn't going to work, but you needed to figure that out. So now that you know, let's try a different way, and not, participating in shame, blame, or victimization. That was one of the key pieces of leadership learning that happened. And it's amazing that of all the degrees I have, of all the training I received, the most impactful training was being able to apply what I have learned over the years that is supposed to go into the workplace, applying it at home. How we did our schedules, how we ran our day, how we had to operate as a family so that we didn't kill each other. Because remember, now I have 7 human beings in one 3 bedroom house. And one, I wasn't expecting to have to do that. But two, I also have different ages, different personalities. Some are introverts, some are extroverts. My son and I loved being at home. This is also a leadership move. You got to know your people. We love being at home. I could be in a room by myself for a week, a month. I will be fine. I have my daughter who and my husband who are absolute extroverts. They are fed by people, and they are in a house with a bunch of introverts who don't want to be around people. So, you have all these different dynamics. And as I started to study each of them, I'm like, it took me about a month. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I have the skills to do this. I know how to run organizations. I know how to lead people. This is how this needs to look. And being able to craft that in a different way and apply what I had learned all these years in the workplace at home changed everything about the way I saw leadership. It changed everything about the way I saw the gifts that my kids are bringing, because now my 12-year-old had skills in some areas that I didn't even know some of these things existed. And I had to sit back, and as I'm watching them do school, I'm like, okay, they're really operating differently. They think differently. They're moving in very different ways from how we used to move. For example, when I went to school, it was sit down, be told what to do. You regurgitated whatever it was the teacher gave you, and that got you your A. And honey, I mastered that system. I like clockwork. I mastered the system. I figured out when to shut my mouth, when to open it, just enough to keep myself in and out of some trouble. But now I'm watching my kids, and their teachers are giving them these projects and just saying go. And I have my son tearing things apart. He was probably about 12, 13 at the time, loved like little mechanical things. So he's on an online school, and they have the teachers saying, go find this in the house, go find this in the house. So they're finding things all over the house, taking them apart, putting them back together. Half of me wants to scream because my type A personality is like, no, don't do that. But then the other part of me is just very intrigued. Like, wait a minute. They're doing things in a very different way. And I think this is a piece that leaders today have to realize, is that the people you are hiring have skills and have ideas that are going to seem absolutely asinine and crazy to you. Let them try it anyway. Let them see. And because if you're enough of a good enough leader, and this is where I had to trust myself. If I'm a good enough leader and understand my craft enough, trust and believe I can fix any mistake you make. I should be able to, honestly. Like and so that's how I entered leadership. When I went back into the field and started working with my people, and they would be oh so nervous about, well, this isn't going to go right. This is going to go right. How do you know? If it doesn't go right, do you know what to do to fix it? And I would ask them that question, like, well, yeah. So what you worried about? If they mess it up and you know how to fix it, then let them mess it up. But chances are they're going to mess it up enough that they're going to have to create it in a different way. And it's going to be amazing to see what happens. And to watch this happen with my clients, the only way that they could get there was to value who these people are and the perspective that they brought. And that was where they were challenged. They were challenged by the fact that people thought differently, that they didn't think the way that they did. And they were challenged with the idea that, oh my gosh, well, maybe they do it better than I did. What happens then? What happens if I'm not a good enough leader? And so it changed the way leadership looked, because leadership was, I have all the information and I'm going to impart it to you. I have the way you're supposed to do it and I'm going to show you. Whereas leadership is now, you have an idea and I'm going to show you how to get there. Or I'm going to show you some of the pitfalls and the ways not to go or to go. And then we're going to see how this plays itself out, because I don't know where this is going. And that is a scary thought as a leader. But as the more I I embraced that discomfort of not knowing and not being in charge and what that meant, the more I saw the leadership in my kids flourish, the more I saw the leadership in my clients flourish. And it meant that leadership looked literally the exact opposite of the way I was taught. It was no longer a giving of information, it was more a facilitation of a path and allowing people to do what they do best and trusting myself enough to know I can clean it up and I can help you clean it up afterwards because I know this system that well. Does that make sense?
When was the last time you had a real conversation about your health? Not the whispered worries or the questions you're afraid to ask, but the bold, honest truth about what your mind and body need. Okay, I'm gonna be real. As I get closer to my 40s, I keep wondering what is happening in my body. Is this perimenopause, something I should be worried about, or is this all just in my head? If you want answers from experts who actually get the cultural barriers we face as Latinas, this is for you. Join us for Fuerte and Fearless, an evening panel discussion on Tuesday, August 13th. We're bringing together a therapist, psychiatrist, and women's health nurse practitioner for the conversations our cultura needs to have. No more secrets, no more shame, just real talk about hormones, mental health, reproductive choices, and everything in between. Because your health is your power, and it's time you owned it. Reserve your spot today at elevatinglacultura.com/fuerte and fearless, because you deserve answers, not silence. I love how you explained this upturning of how leadership should be and versus like how it was taught or modeled to us. I think like you are 100% right, and like how you explained it was perfect, because like there is this thought that as leaders, like we shouldn't necessarily be making other leaders, like we should have everything at the top. And I feel like we're seeing that play out in this current administration and seeing like how awful that mentality is.
Yes.
And I love how like our generation is completely shifting that and not being afraid of other people being better at something, because like if we are working as a team, like you want people to have like their areas of expertise to bring to the table, so that way together everything can like flourish and like exceed expectations. And I love how you said that it started with your family unit, because as I was a child and growing up, like everything was compartmentalized, and I was taught to compartmentalize everything. All of the racist comments, microaggressions, like that went in a little box, and you just like, okay, just ignore it. Your schoolwork, that goes in a little box, okay. Your free time, that goes in a little box. It has to have a purpose, like work. My parents worked, and that was like in a little box when they were home. Like it was, everything was very nice and neat. And then when I had my kids, I was like, everything is supposed to be nice and neat. Why is it not nice and neat? And
Right?
it was, yes. I'm like, okay, so when I decided to let that go, it's when I saw my kids like flourish and like lean into who they were as people. And like this idea of seeing our children as people and individuals was a
Yes.
concept that I like had to heal from in my own mentality, because I was still a child. Even though I had my own family, I was still a child in my parents' eyes. And so
Right?
it took like healing that in order to then like have that trickle down to my kids, and
Right?
not just like mine, but my husband's as well. Like being able to bring him into that, like was wild. So
Right.
I'm curious
That whole
to know.
seen but not heard era. Like we come from that era and now we're
Yes.
literally turning that entire era on its head. It's like, no, children are not supposed to be seen and not heard. Children are supposed to be seen and heard. And then we're supposed to guide them. We're supposed to support them, but we're not supposed to just completely ignore them. That is the role that is
Yes.
indoctrination type behavior. Now, there are some things that are, safety issues. That's a completely different conversation than allowing this human being to be. And we weren't allowed necessarily to be coming up. And you're right. There is a certain healing that has to happen from that. And when you have two people that are coming from that mindset, and the older millennials like yourself are experiencing that, as are the or I guess the young, yeah, the older millennials, as are the younger Gen Xers, because I'm considered part of the younger side of Gen X. I talk to some of my older counterparts. My husband and I are 10 years apart, and oftentimes he and I are having the conversation like, wait a minute, that we can't, no, we're not doing that anymore. No, we're not going to say things like that anymore. And having to like deprogram ourselves, because we often want to take the positive parts or what we saw as the positive parts of our parents' parenting and bring it into our households, but it doesn't always work that way. And then we see some of that toxic behavior start to happen as well. So I commend you and your husband both for being conscious in making those moves, because that's part of the healing process.
Yes, but I wanted to know, like, how do you start having those conversations? Like, if you like start noticing and seeing that those patterns, and I'm talking about maybe like my younger moms who are listening, or like people who are just like, oh, I'm noticing this in my life and I do want to
Yeah.
change. How do you start those conversations with a partner and like bring them into that?
So I'm so glad you asked that question, because that question alone is what led to my husband and I starting the nonprofit. One of the things with our relationship that I think it's because I am his second marriage. He is my first. But I am definitely the more strong-willed of the two of us. He's Mr. Easygoing. Like if you ever met him, we are truly yin and yang. He's the extrovert, but he's they used to call him Party Artie. That's what's his nickname. Like that's who he is. He's the guy everybody wants to party with. He loves on everyone. He's going to take care of everyone. He's like, there's no problems in the world, right? And he just sees the world as always, sunshine and rainbows. And then he marries me, who is like, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. We need to we need to get things together. We got to raise these kids in a certain way. So we're definitely, both sides. We're very, very different. And so the first thing I would say is, you're going to have those conversations with your partner about starting to shift some of your behaviors. Pause for a moment and think about who your partner is and how they receive and hear information. That's the first thing I would say. Just pause. Look at who that person is, because how my husband needs to approach me and how I need to approach him are two totally different ways, depending on what we're trying to do. And that's part of what we talk about in our relationship courses. And I don't like to call them courses. We like to build communities around people that want to have these conversations. And it all started, I hate to admit it, sometimes because of the way the church has played a very interesting role in our current dynamics, but it started at church and going to um, uh, marriage seminars, if you will, that were part of the church, just to understand how to do life together, to be Christians in the way that God wants us to see our relationships, to see our relationship through God's eyes. That's where it started for us, was just being able to have learn to talk to one another, learn to communicate with one another in the way that God has made us, and understanding that the way he sees the world is the way God gave him the lens to see the world. The way I see the world is the way God gave me my lens to see the world. And both of those lenses need to be respected and appreciated, even when we're trying to shift the lens, if you will. And so that would be my first suggestion to folks, is just get to know your partner. And if you don't know yet how to talk to your partner, I would pause and ask them and say, hey, if I had something to bring up which I thought would be a little bit difficult, how would you want me to bring it to you? and like we don't often think about just asking a person how you want and so that was what we were taught to do. It's like, I may have something difficult to bring up, but I'm not sure how to bring it to you, and we have the conversation about how to bring something up before I bring up the thing, because that's part of our relationship. So he might say, well, can you make sure I'm in a good mood? Can you make sure I'm not like just coming in from work and you're pounding me with something that you've been thinking about since this morning, and I'm walking in just trying to collect myself from the day, or vice versa if I'm the one coming in from work. And so we had that discussion first, so that when it came time for us to talk about something as sensitive as how we were raised and how that impacts how we want to raise our kids, we had a platform or a blueprint. And I would say, remember you said that if I had something to tell you, I should do these things. Is now a good time? And I would just ask the question, and he would say yes or no. Sometimes he did tell me like, no, now it's not a good time, Shell. And I wouldn't necessarily know what's going on, but I need to respect the fact that he has a world and a life and a perspective that's going on that's outside of me, and as do I. And so oftentimes what I see couples will do is they'll want to bring something up because it's important to them right there and then, right now, I need to deal with this, but recognize that's about you. If you're trying to bring up something to help that other person see something, you need to be about them. So if you need to deal with it right now, then you need to go figure out what you need to do, because the person just said, I'm not ready right now. And just because you're ready and that person's not, doesn't mean you just get to bogart and say that this is something we need to deal with. So that's, again, just starting out. Recognize when the right place and time. If you don't know the right place and time to bring these things up, have that conversation with your partner before you start doing that. And believe it or not, it can be amazing pillow talk when you're thinking about it. Like, I just want to talk to you about, like, how do I bring up difficult stuff? And this is your intimate partner. This is the person you're spending the rest of your life with. If you can't figure out how to talk to that person, y'all got much bigger issues than what's going on here. The second thing I would say is that setting we have a way that we look at this through the 5 pillars of courageous family leadership. And we put like you talk about those little boxes help us to organize things. And so we actually helped create the little boxes to say, hey, we're going to talk about this box. And so when we talk about family leadership, we talk about the personal leadership box, which has to do with who we are individually. We talk about the relational leadership box, which has to do with how we connect and interact with different people in different environments. We have, there are a total of 5 boxes. We have the professional career box, which is where you keep your work stuff, because remember, work is supposed to sit over here. And yes, it's related to us, but it's its own little box. Then we have the home leadership box. That's how you turn a house into a home, and how, you get the toys up off the floor, and, the caked on whatever off the counters, and, like taking care of your house and your home. And then you also, the final box, I always like to, have people not leave this box out. It's your financial leadership box, how you talk about and deal with money. Because if you don't think money is a box in and of itself, I'll show you a divorced person or someone who's on their way to divorce. Because money is the number one reason. Money and cheating. So if you can keep it, to yourself, and you can keep your money in your pocket, you'll probably keep your marriage. Just saying, right? And so when we talk, I'll say, hey, you know what? Something I want to talk about with how we're raising these kids, and really it's about their personal leadership development. Now I have him in the right mindset because we've had this common language about what we're doing. I know it sounds very formal, but for my husband, he's like, I'm always all over the place, thinking about things. He's like, okay, you've told me where you're going with this. Now I don't have to wonder what it is you're talking about. I don't have to fish around, but I'll say, hey, it's about their personal leadership. And I really want to talk about, let's say we're talking about our daughter, Courtney, who's about to be 16. And we've been thinking, this is actually a real scenario. We've been thinking about whether or not she can get a phone, and whether or not she would have social media. Right now, she has a Wi-Fi enabled device that enables us to like text her and connect with her, but it's very locked down. Like our kids, we don't play all that letting the world raise your kids thing. But at 16, when they're thinking about getting cars and getting a little bit more freedom, and we might consider a phone. But now we're having a conversation before we even have it with her around, well, what should that mean? What kind of device would she need? What kind of connection does she need? So we're having this whole conversation. And then we go into our own upbringing. Well, what did your parents do when you were coming up? Well, I had a pager and I had to do this, that, and the other. Yes, I had a pager, y'all. I said pager. I'm still 25, but I have a pager. Stop playing, right? And he's talking about, remember, he's 10 years my senior. He's like, well, we had the street lights. And then when I was able to drive, like my parents would give me a time and I had to be there or I had to find a payphone and call. So now we're connecting like things that we had to do now don't even exist. So I can't replicate my pager. He can't replicate going to a phone booth and having to have a quarter and call your parents and let them know, that you're late. So now what do we do now with our child who has, a different set of criteria? And believe it or not, we had to have this conversation. We have older kids. We have a 30-year-old and a 24-year-old and a 28-year-old. We had to involve them. We actually brought the older kids and we're like, hey, tell us a little bit about what's available. Now you see that we're having a discussion and we're doing our research to figure out, again, this is a simple decision that some would consider, oh, get a teenager a phone. It sounds like a simple decision. It's not. You have to, we had all these conversations. Then we brought the kids in and we said, okay, what are the things that we need to look out for? What are the things that, you think you would have wanted to have when you were 16 that we didn't provide for you or that you thought they should have? We took all that information in and actually we're still making a decision. I can't even tell you what the decision is because literally this is a real time issue that my husband and I are talking about because now we're researching different devices. Like I don't want to get him a phone or a device that has access to everything on the sun, like, or that I can't lock up in some way. But I also don't want to get her like a little baby device where she has like 5 people that she can contact. And, all her friends are going to be looking at her like, really? You got the 5 kid contact phone at 16? Like, what does that look like? My point of bringing that up in the question of how you talk about these things is all of this just to make a decision is exactly what we do. And we do it on everything as a couple, as a team, as a unit. And I think one of the biggest things we have to do in our marriages and our relationships is remember that you all are a family leadership unit. It is not the extension of your mama's house, and it is not the extension of, his mama's house. This is your house that you both are creating together. And you all need to investigate and have discussions about the decisions that you make in a way that is actually going to be beneficial for everyone. And if that means you need to get some basic language down about how we're going to talk about things, if that means you have to do some research about your person and figure out how to connect with them and whatever that looks like, if that means you have to go do some personal healing and maybe do some personal therapy to overcome some of the things that you have to overcome, but from your childhood, that you need to go on ahead and do that. Right. So that you and your partner can actually have the tough conversations. Now, there's nothing I wouldn't bring up to my husband, but I will ask him, like, hey, honey, is this a good time? I have something serious I want to talk to you about Taylor and financial literacy. That's our 17-year-old. And, maybe some of the spending habits that he's having that I'm a little concerned about. And he'll say, yeah, or, you know what, babe, give me about 20 minutes. I'm finishing something and then we can have a conversation and we'll grab, a cup of tea, together and we'll sit and have that conversation. So I think that the major key to that in relationships is focusing on how you communicate and come together and have discussions and even preempt those discussions by asking how people want things brought up to them is always a good way to start. I hope that was enough to help people
Oh,
start
yeah.
to figure out how to make this work.
I mean, I think like that foundation piece is the communication.
Yeah.
And we are learning that as adults and
Yes.
realizing that we were not taught how to communicate well
Girl.
and or listen well. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate in what I'm learning and healing through. And I homeschool my kids, and I have
Oh, God
told
bless
um, they're in an online program right now, and they asked like, okay, what are your goals for your kids? And they've been in this program, they're going on their 3rd year, and every time I say I want them to have emotional social wellness, like that is my
you.
goal.
Yes.
Even though the academics are important, like if that foundation is there, like the academics are going to follow, like they'll be able to like do the things that they need to do. And I have been working on communication skills with them since they were little and with myself. And I tell my kids, like, I'm learning all of this in real time with you, so let's work together. And so I love the fact that you said that this is a family unit, because like we are shifting this idea of like this hierarchical, like, you have the parents and they make all the decisions, they don't listen to anything that you need or like want, like anything, but we are having these conversations and talking about it as a family unit, listening to both sides, like as the parent, as the child. And I think that is one of the things that I see my kids, and every time they are like in conversation with other adults, they're like, oh, your kids are very like emotionally intelligent, because they can discuss the reasons behind some of the choices that they make and how they're feeling. And I'm like, yes, this is like working. And it's I mean, it's wild to get there. And
Yes.
like my husband and I like still go through our bumps along the way, but as we are working on our relationship and our communication, the kids are seeing that as we're modeling to them. And I just have such hope for their future relationships, whether it's friendships or their
Yes.
partners. Like they're going to have that foundation. And I hope that whoever they are in community with, like also have that foundation. And if not, then hopefully my kids can model that to them. And yeah, and I think that's like, I love how you like talked about that, because that is the foundation to then go out and like as they get jobs, they'll be able to communicate well what they need, listen, work together with the team, and expect that as they go into the workforce. And when they don't see that, when they feel like that is not present in whatever they're doing, they're going to be like, okay, then this is not for me, and they're going to leave. And I
I love
really
that.
um appreciate more people talking about this and teaching like our communities, like the communities of color especially, because of all of the nuances that we are like working through as far as like our cultural experiences, our lived experiences as we're here in the US, and what that means for like our ancestral legacies, and like what do we want to keep with us? What do we want to let go of? What do we want to do new? And yes, it is
Yes, and being
so
intentional about that, right?
yes.
Like that's part of that personal leadership development, like part of what we help families do. That personal leadership development, folks don't understand how many of us are healing from our upbringing.
Mhm.
And not because our parents did anything wrong. Please understand. My parents did the best that they could. I think
Yes.
they did a phenomenal job with me. But there are also some things that I look back on that they did that I would want to do differently. And there are some things that they did that I want to keep. And I know my kids feel exactly the same way about our parenting. And that's what we want. It warms my heart to hear you talk about your kids being emotionally ready to have conversations and explain the reasoning behind their thinking and their decision making. That is huge. Kudos to you and your husband for that. That is awesome. Oh my gosh. That is
Well,
just
thank
phenomenal.
you.
Oh my
Thank
goodness.
you. Yes, I mean, I could talk with you all day. I know we just met, but met virtually, but I feel like we connect on so many levels, and we're both working within our communities to create this generational change and shift for the next generation. So I'd love to end with a question that I ask all my guests. Like, what advice would you have? I know you've given so much advice on just this like one episode, but if you could leave my audience with one piece of advice that they could start working on in their lives, what would that be?
One piece of advice to start working on. Oh wow, there's so many things. It's interesting to be asked that question because, again, I've told you, I've said many times that in our minds, when you get to be almost 50, in my mind, again, I'm still a 25-year-old. I'm still trying to figure the world out. I'm still trying to correct my mistakes. I still have insecurities, and but then I also have this wisdom that's come over time that sometimes I don't even know what to do with. It's like, oh, I know some things, and I'm familiar with some things. And I would say my best advice to people is, um, please don't let fear guide you. Don't let fear be the reason that you do or don't do something. um, Courage is something that to be courageous means to push through the fear. Let me be very clear. I still have fear, but I do not let that guide me. I do not let that stop me. I do not let that be a catalyst or a driver in my life in the way that it did before. I didn't speak up because I was afraid. I didn't, make that move because of how I was afraid of how people might see it. I didn't hire that person because, as a black woman, if I hire too many black people, all of a sudden it's a conspiracy. So I got to figure out how to, dish and dole as opposed to just looking at and hiring the best person. And I remember when I stopped letting fear be the reason or the catalyst or the driver why I do and don't do things, my life and my feeling and my satisfaction with myself went skyrocketed. And so that would be my best advice is, don't let fear be the reason. If you are afraid to do something, right now I work with a lot of people that are afraid to talk about politics. They're afraid to talk about race. They're afraid to talk about what's going on in our society. You're afraid to deal with some of the major issues, even in your own household, in your own family. I need you to stomp out that fear and do what you know is right, regardless of what you think or know the result will be. What I'm saying, that once you're able to not let fear take a hold of you like that, it is like the shackles of enslavement being released. Because many
Mm.
of us are right now are enslaved by our fear. I'm afraid to be, I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be like this person. I'm afraid to do this. I'm afraid to do that. I'm afraid to speak up. Dang it, we need to stop being so scary and start being smarter about what we know we want to do. And so I'm going to say, replace that fear with learning, replace that fear with community, replace that fear with connection with other people that are fearless as well. And it's not that that fear is ever going to go away, but you're going to push through that fear to do what you know is right. And if more people were to push through the fear of what they thought might happen and just go for what it is that to do what you know is right or what is right for you right now, imagine what a better world we would have. And so that would be my major advice. Don't be afraid to deal with some of the tough topics. Don't be afraid to deal with some of the things that are happening in your own household. Don't be afraid of your kids, your spouse, or anybody else. Continue to build communication, build community. And as you do that, just know you have a village and a community of people that are working on this right alongside you. You are not alone.
Mm. Oh, if that is a mic drop, if there ever is one. Yes, thank you so much. That is amazing advice. And before we leave, I want people to know where they can connect with you, where they can find you, because this conversation has like been amazing. And I wish we had more time, and I'll have to have you back on the podcast.
Absolutely.
But where can people connect with you and find you, and especially hire you to be a speaker?
Absolutely. So, if you're interested in the executive work that I do, you can reach me at leadershiplegacyconsulting.com. I know it's a long name. I'm also on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn. So you can reach me there at Dr. Shelley Jones-Holt. You can find me on there, or of course, we'll send you our information. But if you're interested in the family type work that we're doing, the nonprofit work, building up your family leadership, the executive leadership and the family leadership kind of go hand in hand. You can't run your business right and your family's a mess, and you can't have your family a mess or be right and your business is a mess. So both have to be the same, especially for entrepreneurs that are now meshing all of this together. And you can reach me at www.familylegacy5, the number 5.com. And we have lots of offerings, opportunities, retreats, tours, all kinds of different community building events for you and your family. So whatever way you want to connect with me, whether it's on the executive side or on the family leadership side, we are here to support.
Amazing. And yes, I'll have all those links on the show notes for easy access. But I'm just so thankful for your time today. Thank you for sharing everything that you do. I'm so grateful to have met you and to
Here.
find like someone who is like also doing a lot of the things that I talk about within their community, and especially having like a program that people can tap into to learn
Yes.
more and to really grow. So thank you so much. And
You are so
I hope,
welcome.
yes, I hope to connect with you in real life sometime. And we'll have to have you back on the podcast in the future as well.
For sure. For sure. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. Please rate and review this podcast so we can get more ears listening to these stories and we can continue elevating la cultura. You can also comment on our YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories I share. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.